Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, this is our Christmas party episode. It's our last stream of the year, and what we do on this show is we play a tabletop RPG, and then I take recommendations from the live chat, and if you're here, you can join. It's already got a few people in there, but don't be intimidated. They're all very nice, except for one. You know who you are. No, I'm kidding. What we do on the show, we write a story over the course of like an hour or 2 hours sometimes, using prompts from usually itch.io independent tabletop RPGs. And if that's interesting to you, then you are in the right place. And if not, you may enjoy my Tuesday night show where we read folklore. And the most recent one we did, I think, was quite interesting. It was a bunch of Icelandic folklore, but specifically off the top, I added in a story about a real volcano in Iceland, because of course they are having an eruption right now. Let me know if the audio's off or anything, because we are entering our third stream of the sketchy decade-old laptop. It'll be a while until I can replace my laptop, but I will say it made it through yesterday's stream, or Tuesday's stream, which is one of the more demanding streams on the computer. And it only crashed about 30 seconds after I got out. So it was really good timing. So if it's planning on crashing, you hear that, buddy? If you're planning on crashing, do it that way again. 30 seconds after I finish the stream. I sound quiet in my headset. Let me figure if I can figure out why. There we go. Alright. Witchery is here with one, topping off the chat with an incredible emoji that I've never seen before, but it's a colorful person wearing headphones going, it's great. And then Tammy Morelli says, ho, 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 everyone. Hope everyone is ready for the holidays and ready for one of Rory's amazing and fun live streams. Well, I'm ready for your amazing company, Tammy. Thank you for watching. Jumpstore posts what looks to be it's a kitty in a box, and it's very reminiscent of Pusheen, which I have several Pusheens. I have a soft spot for Pusheen. And then there's another cat in a box that's clearly not Pusheen, but it's very cute. From Zombie Wolf. Thanks for watching, Zombie Wolf, and joining us again. And the cat in the box is from Jumpstore. Thank you for watching, Jumpstore. Okay. Before I get into describing the rules of this game, which are very simple, this is a little more lax and silly, this game, we have to make a very important decision. So Chad, I need your eyes for a moment if you have them to offer. If you don't worry about it. I'm just going to turn on some lights behind me, and you're going to tell me what pattern you prefer. There are 8 options. I'm going to number them as I go, and then in the chat, if you like an option, put that number in, and that's the one we'll leave on for the stream. So number 1 is this. Get out of the way. Which does all of them. It's like the demo. Number 2 is what's called in waves, which is like pulsating at slow, then fast. Like an eldritch horror. Number 3 is the sort of different colors selected and bobbing back and forth. I think it speeds up. Yeah, there you go. Number 4 is the slow glow, which means it just sort of builds up slowly. And I'm not going to wait for it to do that. Number 5 is the chasing flash, which is craziness. Number 6 is the slow fade and degrade. So it's just going to come in and out. Number 7 is this insanity, which is really rapid blinking. And number 8 is just the steady on, which I'll leave it on for now. So there's 8 options. You folks vote for which one you want. While you vote for that, I'm going to talk about the game. This part of the show is called litgames. Litgames stands for literature games, but it's lyric games and tabletop RPGs, solo tabletop RPGs, journaling games. There's a dozen different names for them. But they're basically usually indie games that we play here to prompt writing. And the game that we're playing tonight is called One Too Many. And that looks like this. So, One Too Many says, it's really simple. It's a hex system. A hex that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. And then you roll 2d6. Like so. You roll 2d6 and you take the total between them, I think? Or maybe it's 1. No, I'm second guessing myself. Roll 2d6. Is it run like a normal one? It has to be, because it's got single digits on here. So I guess you add them together. I'd originally thought it was like a normal 2d6 where you just take them as different digits. Anyways, you add them together. And then based on the total you get, you take a direction on this little hex map with a set start, which means that I have a hex map. And I will show you that now. This hex map, we start at this is, I will read the description in a minute, but this is actually based on being a Hobbit. And I took this little Hobbit art from DeviantArt, so this is not me. And basically when we roll, let's say we rolled 2 6s, that'd be a 12, we go north here. If we rolled 6 and a 5 or 6 and a 4 or 5 and a 5 or whatever, we go this way. So on and so forth. And eventually we just sort of move our way around until we get to home, which is up here. And each of the symbols on here has an associated description as to what we find here. Like the grass there is just strolling. It's just a casual stroll through the Shire. And as we move through stuff and we see things, we will get a prompt from the location we move to, and then we're going to write a little bit of text about our drunken hobbits walk home. Now, obviously, because this is the Christmas show, they're going to be walking home from whatever the Middle-earth equivalent of a Christmas is. Obviously, it's not Christmas, because there is no Christ in Middle-earth, but a solstice party, I don't even think they... I mean, he did say it was sort of an earlier imagination of Earth, so maybe it's Earth. But anyways, it's a winter walk, and he's drunk, and he's got to get home. So I'm checking back, and I see a couple of votes for 3. So I'm going to go to 3. See what it is. Although Witchery makes a good point about not being too much blinking. I think that's good enough. Hopefully I don't pull that down. Well, it's definitely getting more rapid. Okay, the other vote was for 5. Let's remind myself what 5 is. 5 is much more aggressive. Well, hopefully that's not too dominating. Though I do wonder now. There. It's the only one that doesn't have a lot of jitter to it. Okay. Somebody say, oh, Shrek reference. How much you want to bet we never make it home because the stream will be too long? If there's anything any regular viewer knows about the Varietal show, it's that we never finish. I mean, these games are meant to be like 3 to 4 hours long usually, or they're meant to be like an hour and a half, but you playing quietly alone, which is obviously a much quicker thing. Witchery says, I believe they had a midwinter festival, but Tolkien didn't go into the calendar much. Yeah, and it's been a while since I've been like high, what's the word I'm looking for? Full nerddom in all the details of Middle-earth. I sort of had a phase there for a few, half a decade. So I don't remember that. I do remember a lot about lembas bread for some reason, but I don't recall. Anyways, it's pretty simple. The thing we have to do, though, is we have to give our Hobbit some traits. And I will say up front, I'm looking for something that is in the spirit of the Hobbit books. So I'm not going to purposely reach for something very zany and modern or, you know, raunchy or whatever else. I want us to sort of feel the warmth of Tolkien, maybe a little bit of silliness. But there's silliness in Tolkien as well. So, what do we want our Hobbit to be named? GS says, or as George Costanza's dad said, Happy Festivus. I mean, hands up if you guys still get that. I feel like that's probably getting to be a reference that only few of us know. It's an excellent joke, though. Okay. I'm gonna roll this while I wait. Jumpstore says, I've only read The Hobbit and I just watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so my knowledge on Tolkien is a bit lacking. You know, that's fine. The knowledge that some people have on Tolkien is literally degrees in it. So it actually doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. What kind of Hobbit are we? I do feel like there aren't... Witchery says, do you know only Elven Queens can make and give lembas bread? I did for some reason. Galadriel is the only one in the Third Age who knows how to make it. She was taught by Melian, the Maiar, in Doriath. I did know this. I doubt I could have pulled the names out so ably, but I did know this. And I also know that there is some debate as to whether, because it's such a passing reference to how she gets the lembas bread recipe, because the lembas bread recipe is originally, it's more about how to grow the grain. That is the secret. And I think it's originally something that comes from, you know, their equivalent of gods, but it's passed on to certain people, the knowledge to do so. And so some people argue that maybe she got it more from those gods than this one person, but that's the kind of stuff that, you know, those of us who have too much time on our hands engage with. Jumpstore says Gorg. They don't tend to have short names, do they? Like Frodo, Bilbo. What about, yeah, Witchery says the seeds came from a man. That's the name I was trying to pull for. And how to grow them apparently is rather complicated. Anyway, what am I talking about lembas bread for? My God. Okay, let's get back to the thing I said I was doing. Okay. Just to be clear, Jumpstore, to answer that question, I'm not looking for like lore accurate recommendations here. I just mean stuff that's in the spirit of like, you know, a charming storybook the way the Tolkien books are. Gog Magog. We should have a lady. They're never taught about the ladies. I was actually just thinking that. Witchery, I was like, how many lady hobbits are there really other than the one that Samwise has a crush on, who just basically appears in the beginning and the end. Okay. What should her name be? It's always something quaint. Twee. Very English, like Pippin and Mary, like, you know. It's that kind of, if that is a descriptive element, it's that kind of name. Peony. A flower, why not? They do like their flowers. Are we gonna type today, or there we go. Peony. Oh, their last names are a big deal. I'm just gonna put Proudfoot for now because that is a real name in the series. Peony Proudfoot. Jumpstore says female hobbits always have flower names, right? That I didn't know. Is that true? I mean, I might have indirectly picked that up. Okay. Peony Proudfoot. Do we have any descriptive elements we want to add in here? Obviously, stout with hairy feet is a quintessential element. Give me like a couple of words on personality, like single words, like hyper or distracted or quiet or whatever else. Tenacious. Peony green hand. I like that. Let's do that. Peony green hand. Stout with hairy feet. I'm going to give her strawberry hair. Worn. And a long braid down her back. Witchery says Rosie Cotton is Samwise lady friend who was mentioned before, which is Rosie Cotton is an excellent name. She's particularly proud of her hairy ear canals. Okay. Proud of her hairy ear canals. We got some votes for stubborn. I mean, I guess that's probably more dwarves, but also there's some stubbornness in hobbits. Stubborn. Jumpstore says, aren't hobbits pretty lazy and reluctant? In general, yeah. Obviously the most famous hobbits are the ones that we talk to. Yeah, Witchery mentions you don't really meet any female hobbits. The ones you do meet are either a love interest or just a jerk. As was the case in all the books, really. Witchery says they're not lazy. They're just they enjoy their good food, but yeah, they do a lot of farming. And they seem to have a weird social hierarchy that involves a lot of classism. Stubborn, reserved is the word you're looking for there, but I'm gonna go. Yeah, Witchery puts it well. They're not ambitious. There's definitely lazy ones. I think that Merry and Pippin are, well, they're tenacious. I don't get the impression that they did a lot of work, but they were kind of wealthy, of a higher class standard than someone like Samwise who does gardening all the time and things like that. Proud of her hairy ear canals. Stubborn. I'm gonna say a romantic to try and capture some of the other things that were put here. And when I say romantic, I don't necessarily mean romance as in love. I mean like someone who views the world romantically, if you know what that use of the phrase is. Okay, that's enough. For now, let's get to the exiting of the pub. What is the name of the pub in the Shire? Oh god, I used to know this. It's not the Prancing Pony, that's outside the Shire, or at least at the far end of it. I guess I'll do a little description of her and we'll think about that. Peony was staring into a oaken cup swollen with the dregs of ale and bound by finely wrought iron. Witchery says the green dragon. That's the one in the Shire. Okay. Oh, Janera's here. Good evening, Janera. Janera says they were like goofball college kids. Yeah, Merry and Pippin, yeah. Merry and Pippin are little... someone's going to argue against this characterization, but I think they were basically trust fund kids that sort of learned to be a little less that way. Witchery's all the way in on this, giving us lore. No need to apologize, Witchery. We're going to lean on that for everything we want to do in line with the... Yeah, the Prancing Ponies and Brie, yeah, which is... I know you know. I was just describing for other people. The Prancing Pony, the most famous place, probably a pub in frankly, literature of fantasy, where they meet Strider. That's not actually in the Shire, really. I can't remember if it's technically on the outskirts or if it's truly outside of the Shire. Peony was staring into an oaken cup swollen with the dregs of ale and bound by finely wrought iron. She was glowing with the warmth and love. Only a party at the Green Dragon could impose? No, impose is the wrong word. Could develop. Could grow. Could kindle. How about that? Yeah, that's what I mean. Sorry, that's right, witchery. The Shire is like a province in a place. Yeah. She was glowing with the warmth and love only a party at the Green Dragon could kindle. It was midwinter, which is what we are deciding to call this. If anyone has a real Hobbity name for their midwinter fest, pitch it now. Or if you know there is one. I couldn't find one. It was midwinter, and the tables had been... It was midwinter, and all the hobbits of the Shire were in reverie. Jumpstore says, I just remembered the prancing pony because it sounded cute. I have a special memory reserved for cute things. It is a cute name for a place that is not cute. This is like this depraved, drunken place of scary things where only scary things happened. It was midwinter and all the hobbits of the Shire were in reverie. Not 2 hours prior. We gotta have some food descriptions here. So if you have a food you want at the party that got eaten, put it in the chat now. What's your favorite Christmas food that should be at this party? Genera says, parsnips, absolutely. How do you prefer them? Parsnips are so good. They're a truly underrated vegetable in Canada. I know you're not supposed to eat them too often. I know they have a bit of a toxin to them or something like that, but I would eat them all the time if I could. They're expensive here. I don't know how they are in other countries. Not 2 hours prior, the long tables of the low-roofed pub were filled edge to edge. By the way, you know, doing something based on Tolkien is setting yourself up for a, frankly, unattainable comparison. We all know I'm not Tolkien. Tolkien's prose was incredible. So let's just sort of evoke it a bit and accept that I will not be achieving Tolkien levels of prose. Witchery says it's the best. Oh wait, Witchery, just out of curiosity, you're one of those Uber fans who've managed to read the Silmarillion. I've read half of the Silmarillion. I know the question wasn't targeted at me. Witchery says it is the best pub name as a horse girl, but no respectful hobbit would be found there. No, and that's why it was considered strange that they were there in the book. Oh, rabbit. Good idea, Genera. Witchery says, do you want to derail Rory completely? I can tell you all about it. Just tell us about the trees. There's a literal chapter on trees in the Silmarillion. Tammy Morelli says, fudge for sure. Chocolate fudge with crushed candy canes. Oh, that sounds good. One of my daughters specifically. Your daughter has great taste. Jumpstore says you love bragging about your daughter on Tammy. I mean, what good mother wouldn't? That's a lovely thing for her to be doing. The 2 hours prior the long tables of the low roof pub were filled edge to edge with the finest baking and roasted meats. The Shire could yield. There were glistening mutton legs, I guess. A bronze platter of tender rabbit, laid across a bed of honey roasted, let's say. Parsnip. Zombie Wolf is saying, frankly, bannable things. I don't really care for pie. Zombie Wolf. Who hurt you? I kid. You're allowed to have your own taste. But they are talking sweets, yeah. Weed is for people, not for this person, unfortunately. Genera says, I really need to actually read the books. I have them, I just need to read them. They're books that work better read aloud. You have someone who you can talk to reading them too. I actually recommend it. They work a lot better that way. I read it to my partner, who just would fall asleep, and then I would just be reading it aloud alone. Okay, so fudge, and I'll do the desserts in a minute. A bronze platter of tender rabbits laid across a bed of honey roasted parsnips. Breads of several hues, from dark as night to light as dawn. Sweet butters and clotted creams. Roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, fried potatoes, and green stewed greens with potatoes. All swimming together and complementary sauces of mint and herb and drippings. Jump Store won't drink coffee. That's fine. GS says yams. Yeah, I like yams. Buttermilk pie. Christmas pudding. And mince pies. Mince pies is something that I wanted. I like how we're 15 minutes in and we're just describing the meals. That's very Hobbit of us. Donuts and cinnamons. Beer and ale, yeah. I'm gonna do the desserts next. All of this, however, was nothing more than a pile of bones and some streaks of grease by the midpoint of the party. From there, nettle ales, fine distilled dwarven grains, dwarven liquors, let's say, and a variety of sweet wines were rolled out by the cask to settle their stomachs for dancing. That dancing was done, though. By the end, their voices were hoarse from laughter and song, and they settled in for the first dessert course. The platters of bones and grease were slid away and replaced by long by layered, let's say, plates of fried sweet dough, cinnamon twists, mincemeat, pies so fresh from the oven, the crust still crackled with foaming butter. On the cooler plates was peppermint fudge, oh, mead is a good call, Genera. Let me add that in. Buttermilk pies, that's right. Buttermilk pie. How about a and a variety of sweets flavored by the spices about the Shire, foraged from the Shire. Reigning over the table was a finely sculpted chocolate dragon. Whose mouth was filled with rum truffles. That dragon and all it held sway over was well and truly chipped away by the appetites of the partygoers. All that remained was the snout of the creature melting by a lantern sitting near the swaying peony, who smiled in her recollection of the party. Witchery says, I'd say send help, but about how obsessed they are with Tolkien, but only if you can get me to Middle Earth. Jumpstore says, oh, he spelt flavored with a U, because I'm Canadian. Perfect nod to its English origins. That's how we spell it here in Canada. I don't know why I said that in a southern accent. This is how I speak in Canada. It's how some people speak in Canada. But the bartender was shaking her awake. Well, she wasn't asleep. Was shouting it was time to go. So with an unsteady step, Witcher says, are you trying to move to Alberta? No, no one moves to Alberta. You default there. It's not a fair thing to say at all. I've had plenty of lovely times in Alberta. Join me for highly specific regional humor. But the bartender was shouting it was time to go. So with an unsteady step, Peony swayed in counter motion of her long strawberry blonde braid. Out the door into the biting cold, and began her walk home. Witchery says, I mean, you could be in Alberta, actually, I don't know. I'm in Greater Vancouver. I think I've said that before. I'm not too... That narrows it down to like a few million people. Witchery says, confirm not in Alberta. Yeah, no. What about Manitoba? I have a friend there. Manitoba's peaceful. I'll give it that. There's, ways you can interpret peaceful. Some people do boring. I'm okay with, like, quiet open fields and stuff like that, but a lot of people don't like Manitoba. But there's also places like, Winnipeg, which is apparently not very good. I have not been there, though. Okay, so I rolled a 6. Which I think I don't have an option to go to a 6. So I'm going to re-roll, because we can only, because of where we're placed, we can only go certain directions. That's a 3. I can't do a 3. That's a 9. I think I can do a 9. Okay, we can go down. And so then we go down. Oh, I didn't transition this. Just a second. Genera says it's my go-to for escaping Murica when it gets too bad. Has that not happened yet? I mean, I can only go off what I see in the news and what my friends down there say. Okay. Let's see what this symbol is. And actually play the game for just a moment at least. This is harsh words. You've decided now's the time to have it out with an old friend. What's the cause of your dispute and how could you repair it? Oh. Okay. Well, chat. Who is the friend that we have a dispute with? We're obviously going to wander towards their house and be like, now's the time for me to tell you what I really think. I'll sort of set it up, but you guys give me an idea of what does a Hobbit feud look like? I mean, there's lots of feuds in Hobbits we can play on. Witchery says play the game 41 minutes in. Us in this stream? Hey, it's fair enough. That's why sometimes I set up characters ahead of time. But I'll be honest, my Christmas episodes are always very casual. I'm not too worried about it. This is sort of like for people who are on board with this already. Jumpstore says, apparently I have some Irish heritage as my grandmother's family owns some castle ruins in Ireland. Oh, cool. And if you have Irish heritage, you can get citizenship easy, so that's my backup plan. I don't. I have Norwegian heritage, but I don't think they're as keen to have me back. And Scottish heritage, and I know they don't want me back. Witchery coming up with these Hobbit names like they were Tolkien themselves. Bill Shortleg. And Genera says veggie throwing. Veggie throwing. Like veggie throwing as in that's how this is going to get resolved, or that's what they're mad about. Because Witchery says he stole her best pumpkin back in autumn. How about they were on oh, no, that doesn't work. I was going to say it was a disputed border of land, and she claimed to have grown it. Peony was leaning into the winter winds and catching sight of the sparkling sky. This is trash compared to how Tolkien writes. Okay, yes, both. Okay. Peony was leaning into the winter winds and catching sight of the sparkling sky between its breaths, when suddenly a fire lit in her chest. The reason why I was saying that is we're on the opposite side of the Shire to the house, so I couldn't find a way to make it work. Sometime in the fall, before the annual pumpkin contest, her prize pumpkin had gone missing. Then, when she emerged, crestfallen and without an entry at the festival, oh, Witchery's got the logic there. Grows them at her grandmother's house. Tammy says, I refer to myself as a mutt. I have a little bit of everything. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably fair for me as well. Also, one side of my family was adopted, and we don't know that much about it. We've only recently found some stuff out, so that muddies all the water. Good idea, Witchery. I like this idea. So it sort of grew on the fence. That can come out in their argument. Without an entry at the festival, she discovered... What's his name? I've lost track of this sentence, so I think it's a run-on at this point. Bill Shortleg, neighbor to Peony's grandmother. Is that the turn of phrase they use in Hobbit culture? Because obviously there's several turns. I know, because he's English, and I used to call my English grandmother Nana. I don't know if that's a thing. To Peony's grandmother's neighbor to Peony's grandmother, where she grew. There's a lot of info for one sentence. I'm gonna start back at the beginning. Sometime in the fall, when she attended the festival, crestfallen and without an entry, she discovered Bill Shortleg, we're going to put this information later, had a pumpkin of the same size, shape, and marking of her prized Why is this going so slow? There we go. Squash. Bill was a neighbor to Peony's grandmother, whose garden she used to grow her pumpkins, for the soil was better for it in the South Shire. Witchery says grandmother is used if I recall. Okay. Jumpstore says Nan. They call them Nan, do they? I just call mine Nona. Sicilian? Nona is an excellent title. I wish there was some event or circumstance where I could be called Nona. I think it's funny how close Nana sounds to Nona. I mean, they probably have similar roots, right? Their languages are off the same tree. Bill was a neighbor. I mean, as much as English is off any tree. I mean, English is a mutt of a language. I think this sentence is a mess too. Bill was a neighbor to Peony's grandmother, whose garden Peony used to grow her pumpkins. My God, what a mess that sentence was. For the soil was better for it in the South Shire. The soil was better for it in the South Shire, and quite by accident then, and not with ill intention, Peony swaggered, found herself passing in front Bill home. She shoved open his front gate with enough force. It swung back against the fence and shook it of its coat of snow. She curled her fist and, well, leaning against the door with her eyes half shut, she pounded and shouted, "Bill!" What was his last name? Shortleg, that's right. Tammy Morelli says, I would like to say you were all so smart and very creative. That's a very kind thing to say, Tammy. I assigned to the idea that all stories were written by communities, and I think that we're all smarter for each other's company. And that's probably one of the main reasons why I run this stream, just to remind people of that. I mean, it's hard to see the comparison, I guess, but you used to, in the winter, because you couldn't do as much farming or foraging or hunting or whatever else, and you didn't have any TV or anything like that, you used to do spinning. Not in the modern sense, but like spinning flax or wool or whatever else. And they would sit at night by the fire, usually in one person's house with some ale, and somebody would get up and tell stories while people would spin, men and women. I mean, women were doing the spinning. Men and women would attend the party. And it was a way to pass time in winter, and that's where a lot of tales were built. And they were built with crowds, right? So, somebody might be a bard, they'd tell a story, and then somebody would sort of shout a version of the story they'd heard or what was coming next. They're drunk, right? And the bard would work in what they say. And that's sort of the DNA of most narratives, is that they take from pieces of the community and they morph and they change into new things. Tolkien being a good example. Tolkien is seen as an independent work, but it is highly dependent on the things that he was reading and was told as a child and heard told to his children by their caretaker, who was Icelandic. And so I am of the view that the idea of single authors and being very possessive about creative products and stuff, that stories are cultural properties, and that largely what we're doing here on the middle of December is just a modern day version of those old spinning parties, where we just get together and we make up stories, and that's why they don't need to be groundbreaking or anything. They don't need to equal profit. It's just a cultural activity, and I'm sure they have their influences on the people that watch, and at some point may create more stories, which is my only goal. So yeah, I think that we're all smarter together. Bill Shortleg, come out here and give me my trophy. Peony had a reputation of being gregarious as a rule, but in the depths of feasting and drinking, she found her courage to speak unfriendly words Witchery says, spin a yarn. Yes, exactly. Yeah. As I understand it, that is the source of the phrase. Jump Story, I missed it. You said, did you ever read Strega Nona growing up? No. I don't even think I've heard of it. Sorry. It's supposed to mean grandmother witch, but he didn't spell the right Nona, so it actually translates to the 9th witch. Oh, interesting. Jumpstore says, the challenges of being an American-born of an immigrant family with a sad face. I'm sorry if that's been hard. Hopefully you find joy in community where you can. Witchery says, the thing about hobbits is that they're lovely people generally, but they're absolutely opportunist about getting some free food. I mean, who isn't? After a few more knocks on the great round door of Short Legs' home, a window alighted with a low lantern flame. I think candles or lanterns, I can't recall. A window alighted with a low lantern flame. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention something. I will do that in a minute. A Christmas gift for me from somebody whose game I played. So whoever out there in the land, I don't know. I do not let me finish this stream without doing that package opening for you guys. I will finish this little interaction first. GS says, alighted means landed, doesn't it? Like a mosquito? Maybe. Knocks more like pounding. Yeah, I didn't want to say pounding again, though. And punch seemed too violent. Well, now I gotta look it up. Let's see what alighted is. Yeah, you're right. It is landing. What would be the word here, then? Only English. Alighted would be landing, and to be alight would not be whatever. A window glowed. Stop being fancy. With a low lantern flame. Followed by a gruff shout from Bill himself. Yeah, illuminated was the first word that came to mind for me. It just doesn't fit the cadence well. Witchery says, despite the fact that Tolkien died in 1973, the absolute earliest the Silmarillion might enter the public domain is 2043. That is correct. Witchery says, just think what that does to the commons. I agree. And I know that Tolkien was possessive of his work, and I think he had no right to be. I think that he took quite handily from a lot of the sources to make beautiful works, and then, just like Disney, shut the door behind him. Like, you're allowed to use the commons, but you're not allowed to lock off everybody else's continuous use of what is effectively commons. People get very defensive and protective about canon and stuff like that, and I don't know. You gotta let that go. That's not how stories grow. You gotta break canon to make new stories. You're condemning things to die, a cultural death, when you do that. Followed by a gruff shout from Bill himself. What does Bill say? Peony! Why are you rattling my door in the middle of the night? I am not entertaining guests. Come back in the morning. Peony continued to pound and rattle the door in its frame like the skin of a great war drum, and shouted, "You stole my pumpkin, my prize pumpkin, off my grandma's fence. That prize was mine." So weirdly enough, the mouse is not the main one to blame. He's the main one to blame. They're talking about Disney copyright. The main one to blame actually is weirdly Europe. Europe had a standard, because that was Disney's argument. Europe had a standard that was life of the author plus 75 years, when it was life of the author plus 50 years everywhere else, because that was the international trade agreement minimum. And then they went to courts in the 90s, sort of late 80s and 90s, mostly in the 90s though. Disney made the case that they couldn't be competitive with Europe. And they needed to bump it up to plus 75 years. Now, I don't know the whole story as to why it was so long in Europe. I didn't get that far in the research. I wrote a little essay on this that I just didn't think was good enough to actually film a video about. But I did learn a fair bit about the American one. And then, of course, people made the same argument in like Canadian courts and stuff. Although I think Canada might still be 50 years. Oh yes, Witchery says in Sonny Bono said that if it was up to him, nothing would ever leave copyright, which is an objectively insane thing to say. Zombie Wolf says, who is Shire? Whew. You know what, Zombie Wolf, don't feel bad. You know, it's probably just not a part of your life. But Shire was a very, very big pop star up until probably the mid-2000s. They're still around, but nowhere near as popular as they were. Witchery says, the US forced us to change our copyright through a free trade agreement. It was plus 50 here. Yeah. Yeah, and it's sort of like, that's how it goes. One person, for some reason, makes a case somewhere, and then everybody else makes a case for it, and then it's all ruined. Zombie Wolf making us feel old. Hey, that's okay. Share is not exactly quintessential knowledge, I think. Maybe someone disagrees. Freddie Mercury, on the other hand. You stole my pumpkin, my prized pumpkin, off my grandma's friends. That prize was mine. I watered that pumpkin and cared for it with twice the diligence of you. The majority of it was leaning clearly onto my property line. Oh, right, the veggie throwing It was a dual-parented pumpkin, yes. Making it legally mine, I measured. It was a ½ inch more on my side of the fence. This is the right kind of petty for hobbits, right? Like, they are kind of weirdly petty about stuff at times. Bill swung open his window and leaned out to explain with indignation. Whoop. The vine was rooted on my side, Peony said, swaggering back from the door and stumbling into a snowdrift. Where she came to a sudden seat. You know what else I forgot to do? It doesn't really show up, but I forgot to do this. Hey, reindeer horns. It's a vine, Peony. It was rooted in both our yards. Bill shouted back. Can I just say I really like the phrasing of Witchery's comment here. Can I just say I'm way more mad at Sonny than the mouse? That man didn't even have anything that was worth that dragon's greed of his. Most of the show was Shire. Damn right. No, it's completely fair to shout about copyright. You guys, every generation after a certain point, especially not even just millennials, Gen Z and lower, has been robbed of the right to sort of rewrite and make cultural property a part of the identity of their contributions and to jump off from the places. In fact, it seems almost obscure and weird that I would suggest it to most people. But that's the way it used to be, you know? You used to basically start out your writing career writing what could effectively be seen as fan fiction. And then it finds its own roots and you make your own worlds, and, you know, that's what Tolkien did. Whether he wants to frame it that way or not. You've been robbed. Anyways, Merry Christmas. Let's get back to the story. It was rooted in both our yards, Bill shouted back. But it was more rooted in mine. Peony slurred, then felt her hand press on a frozen turnip being stored in the snow. Don't think about it too much. Witchery says, having canon is fun, but canon shouldn't be law. Exactly. If somebody wants to make something non-canon, it does no violence to the canon. despite how the internet reacts. Every time somebody wants to do something original or weird with blessed properties. Then felt her hand press on a frozen turnip being stored in the snow. In a rather un-Hobbit like moment, she gripped it and threw it at Bill Shortlegs' big moon face hanging from his front window. With a yelp and a wet smack, she knew it had connected. Bill retreated, but for a moment. Before Peony could say she was sorry, for she immediately was. Jump Store is talking about 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah, good example. Like, do I love 50 Shades of Grey? No, but a lot of people did, right? And it was a big piece of culture, and it wouldn't have been possible if they didn't start with fan fiction. That's how things go. I mean, here's a strange piece of fan fiction that I don't think people think of as fan fiction. Both Star Wars and Indiana Jones are effectively fan fiction for 40 serials that Lucas and Spielberg grew up watching when they were kids. Thinly veiled. Witchery says, and honestly, copyright has taught people to act really strangely about anything that doesn't pretend it's not a retelling. Fairy tale retellings are not done by Disney. Often get raked through the coals for being derivative when all fiction is. Indeed. You and me, Witchery, we're on the same page about this. Peony could say she was sorry, for she immediately was. Then returned with a green potato and swung a volley back. It bounced off her forehead with a thud. And she fell back, trying to dodge it. For a moment, though, not a moment, I just said moment, Bill widened his eyes and said, "Oh, I didn't mean to hit you that hard. Have I knocked you out?" Peony sat back up and said, "I'm sorry, Bill. I may have drunk too much mead. This is my first and hopefully last turniping of a neighbor." Get your ammunition, Bill, says GS. Yeah. And a turnip could deliver quite the wallop, I bet. Yeah. Witchery says Lancelot is a fan insert to add courtly romance to an established tale. Hell yeah, it is. Witchery says, thank you for being my safe space, for yelling about freeing the public domain from its shackles. Well, yeah, you've definitely found somebody who is well invested in that viewpoint. He was the OG Mary Sue. Yeah, well, that's what Mary Sue is like, not even really an insult. Like, you don't want it in maybe adult fiction too much because it's a bit dull, but like kids' books are Mary Sue because that's what kids like as a general rule. Let's not even start on Jeffrey of the Mon Moss altering things to suit him. I don't think I spelled that right, but I don't like him, so I don't think I know him. But I also may know him, and I just forgot his name, because we all know Rory's terrible at names. I'm sorry, Bill. I may have drunk too much mead. This is my first and hopefully last turniping of a neighbor. What do you think Bill should say in response to this? Bill's been hit in the face with a turnip after being woken up out of his sleep, and he's a hobbit. Can be a little grumpy for something that he sees as an injustice. But he does feel a bit bad because he thinks he hit Peony well enough to knock her out. She's apologized. You know, I don't think it's that neat. Hobbits aren't so, like, well adjusted that necessarily he would take that right away. So what do you feel like Bill would say here? Because I think, obviously, we're only going to get to the one scenario. Oh, I wrote down a lot of Arthurian legends. Ha! Sorry if you're on headphones. I didn't expect that. GS says, Peony gets all maudlin overly. I love you, Bill. You're such a great guy. Well, that's definitely happening. You're right. That's a good observation. Zombie Wolf says, were the King Arthur tales children's stories to you, Rory? No, it was a more general reference. It was just, there are stories in the world and in movies that are obviously primarily targeting children, and guys my age will go online and act like, why is it doing stuff that children like? As if that's, you know, a valid thing to say. I can think of an example, but it is a bee's nest I care not to kick on the internet. Witchery is saying they read Hannibal as a kid. It's a hell of a book to read as a kid. What do we think Bill should say? Bill's been hit in the face, but he kind of wants to make good. What do we want to do with Bill? And then we'll read this story back, and then I'll show you the package I got. It's a cool package. You guys will like it, I think. Witchery says, have you considered that the little ponies are acting like little ponies? Yes. Hey, you know, I did actually watch a few seasons of My Little Pony. It wasn't like a brony or anything, but my partner was an animator and was interested in it for her own reasons. And I watched it, and I wouldn't say it like grabbed me, but it was a lot better written than I expected. I can see why it gained an adult following. It's pretty solid. It has the Pokemon problem though, like in the sense that it starts to be too much lore. It's obsessively lore filled by the end, or the end of when I stopped watching, anyways. But yeah, the ponies are. GS says, shares the trophy. I think he won't share the trophy. That's my instinct. He's kind of a grumpy old man. He thinks it's not fair. But I think I like your idea. Offers to help her with next year and let her take the credit or share the credit. Let's say that. I don't think he's that good. Witchery says, kids love that, Rory. Lore is great. Do they? Some kids do. I don't know that all kids do. I guess I just feel like when I try to follow Pokemon lore on it, like when if I turn on a modern Pokemon cartoon, which I don't do often, just to see what's going on with this show that I watched when I was a kid, it's barely in English. And I don't mean like it's in Japanese or something. I mean, just the sentences they're stringing together are practically nonsense. My daughter loved My Little Pony, Tammy says. Yeah, it had really strong characters, too. The modern My Little Pony, anyways. Anyways. Bill was holding a clump of snow to his eye with a frown, but did not toss another potato. After a tense minute of silence, Zombie Wolf says, I've been analytical even as a child, so if a show didn't answer a question, I had felt cheated. Yeah, I think for some people that's the case, for sure. As I've grown older, I find, and I guess maybe this is just sort of perspectives on the world, but I find that I want to know less. I guess I live in a world where I begin to recognize how little is explainable, and so I've learned to sort of enjoy the mystery of that a bit more. And I've started, when I do write. I just haven't released anything in a while, but I do write my own stuff, and I've started to sort of purposely leave gaps in my explanations so people can fill them in and stuff. Okay, after a tense minute of silence, Bill said, well, I suppose it was a contentious location for a pumpkin, though that one was definitely mine by a ½ inch. However, Bill swallowed like some... I don't feel like he said like much. As if some great difficulty was now bearing on him. And he continued, I suppose next year we could discuss a mutual entry to the pumpkin contest. Peony, lit by the silver moon light and sparkling with a seasoning of fresh snow, spread a wide smile and began to well up with tears before slurring out the words GS says, shares the trophy, offers to help her next year, and let her take the credit. Where was the other thing you said, GS? Oh, I love you, Bill. You're such a great guy. There you go. You're such a... You're just... I don't care what any of the pound foot say. You Bill, big Billy boy, you are just the greatest Hobbit to ever Hobbit his way about the Shire. Bill raised an eyebrow at this maudlin and drunken then said, "Good evening." Then Peony he slammed shut his front window, and the lamplight immediately extinguished. Peony stayed on the front lawn for 5 or 6 minutes, shouting at other passing hobbits coming home from the party that there lived in this mound the finest gentleman in all the Shire. Bill knew. Let's not do Bill. A passing crew of 3. The mayor and 2 close friends. Recognized that Peony might have been a little wet in the whistle for a lonely winter walk, and invited her to join their caroling while they secretly guided her home safely. Okay. Witchery says, "Oh, Peony, she's never living that down." GS says, "Rory, you're too good at this drunken slobber." Okay. Let's see what we came up with. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to hear what we came up with. The game we played tonight was called One Too Many. And as it says, One Too Many is a game about being a hobbit, yes, that kind of hobbit from Tolkien's work, who has had one too many drinks down at the pub and now has to walk home. And of course, we made ours a midwinter party. And our character who is walking home in our playthrough, which we called A Merrier World, is Peony Greenhand, who is a lovely young female hobbit, which is a rare thing to see a story about from Tolkien, so we're trying to correct that, who is stout with hairy feet, has strawberry hair worn in a long braid down her back, proud of her hairy ear canals, which never came up. I forgot about that, I'll be honest. And stubborn and a bit romantic about the world. And just as a note, the way the game works, of course, is that we have a map. And we made it to one square, which is very us, where we rolled dice to determine our direction, and then when we go a certain direction on here, it tells us what we find there. And what we found there was harsh words. We wanted to settle an argument with a friend or a person we knew. So, I will now read you what we came up with. Peony was staring into an oaken cup swollen with the dregs of ale and bound by finely wrought iron. She was glowing with the warmth and love only a party at the Green Dragon could kindle. It was midwinter, and all the hobbits of the Shire were in reverie. Not 2 hours prior, the long tables of the low-roof pub were filled edge to edge with the finest baking and roast meats the Shire could yield. There were glistening mutton legs, a bronze platter of tender rabbits laid across a bed of honey-roasted parsnips, breads of several hues from dark as night to light as dawn, sweet butters and clotted creams, roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, fried potatoes, and stewed greens with potatoes, all swimming together in a complementary sauces of mint and herbs and drippings. All of this, however, was nothing more than a pile of bones and some streaks of grease by the midpoint of the party. For from there, they rolled out ales, fine distilled dwarven liquors, elven mead, and a variety of sweet wines were rolled out by the cask to settle their stomachs for dancing. That dancing was done now, though, and by the end their voices were hoarse from laughter and song, and they settled in for their first dessert course of several. The platters of bones and grease were slid away and replaced by layered plates of fried sweet dough, cinnamon twists, and mincemeat pies, so fresh from the oven the crust was still crackling with foaming butter. On the cooler plates was peppermint fudge, buttermilk pie, and a variety of sweets flavored by the spices foraged from the Shire. Reigning over the table was a finely sculpted chocolate dragon whose mouth was filled with rum truffles. That dragon and all it held sway over was well and truly chipped away by the appetites of the partygoers over several hours. All that remained was the snout of the creature melting by a lantern sitting near the swaying Peony, who smiled in her recollection of the great party. But the bartender was shouting it was time to go, so with an unsteady step, Peony swayed in counter-motion of her long strawberry braid out the door and into the biting cold to begin her walk home. Peony was leaning into the winter wind and catching sight of the sparkling sky between its breasts when suddenly a fire lit in her chest. Sometime in the fall prior, before the annual pumpkin contest, her prize pumpkin had gone missing. Then she attended the festival, crestfallen and without an entry, and discovered Bill Shortleg had a pumpkin of the same size and shape and marking of her prized squash. Though I was noted, that's actually a gourd. Bill was a neighbor to Peony's grandmother, whose garden Peony used to grow her pumpkins. In whose garden Peony used to grow her pumpkins, for the soil was better for it in the South Shire, and she lived in the north. Quite by accident then, and not with ill intention, Peony found herself passing in front of Bill's home. She shoved open his front gate with enough force it swung back against the fence and shook off its coat of snow. She curled her fist, and while leaning against the door with her eyes half shut, she pounded and shouted, "Bill Shortleg, come out here and give me my trophy!" Peony had a reputation of being gregarious as a rule, but in the depths of feasting and drinking, she found her courage to speak unfriendly and not hobbit-like words. After a few more knocks on the great round door of Shortleg's home, his window glowed with a low lantern flame, followed by a gruff shout from Bill himself. "Peony! Why are you rattling my door in the middle of the night? I'm not entertaining guests. Come back in the morning." Peony continued to pound on the door and rattle the door in its frame like the skin of a great war drum and shouted, "You stole my pumpkin, my prize pumpkin, off my grandma's fence. The prize was mine." Bill swung open his front window, and leaned out to explain with indignation, "I watered that pumpkin and cared for it with twice the diligence of you. The majority of it was leaning clearly onto my property line, making it legally mine. I measured. It was half an inch more on my side of the fence." "The vine was rooted on my side," Peony said, swaggering back from the door and stumbling into a snowdrift where she came to a sudden seat. "It's a vine, Peony. It was rooted in both our yards," Bill shouted back. "But it was more rooted in mine," Peony slurred, then felt her hand press on a frozen turnip being stored in the snowbank where she had landed. In a rather un-Hobbit-like gesture, she gripped it and threw it at Bill Shortleg's big moon face hanging from his front window. With a yelp and a wet smack, she knew it had connected. Bill retreated but for a moment before Peony could say she was sorry, for she immediately was. He then returned with a green potato in hand and swung his volley back at Peony. It bounced off her forehead with a thud, and she fell backwards into the snowdrift, trying to dodge it. Bill widened his eyes and said, I didn't mean to hit you that hard. Have I knocked you out?" Peony sat back up and said, "I'm sorry, Bill. I may have drunk too much mead. This is my first and hopefully last turniping of a neighbor." Bill was holding a clump of snow to his eye by this point with a frown, but did not toss another potato. After a tense minute of silence, Bill said, "Well, I suppose it was a contentious location for a pumpkin, though that was definitely mine by half an inch I measured. However," Bill swallowed as if some great difficulty was suddenly bore upon him, and he continued, "I suppose next year we could discuss a mutual entry to the pumpkin contest, since we share the vine." Peony, lit by the silver moonlight and sparkling with a seasoning of fresh snow, spread a wide smile and began to well up with tears before slurring out the words, "I love you, Bill. You're I don't care what any of the Poundfoots say. You, Bill, big Billy boy, you are just the greatest hobbit to ever hobbit his way around the Shire." Bill raised an eyebrow at this maudlin and drunken display, then said, "Right, good evening then, Peony," and he slammed shut his front window, and the lamplight inside immediately extinguished. Peony stayed on Bill's front lawn for another 5 or 6 minutes, shouting to other passing hobbits that were also coming home from the party that in this house behind her, lived the finest gentleman in all the Shire. It was a passing crew of 3, the mayor and his 2 close friends, who recognized that Peony might have been a little wet in the whistle for a lonely winter walk, and invited her to join their caroling while they secretly guided her home safely. And that is our Christmas tale in the Shire. The game itself, I believe, is free on itch.io, and if I don't forget, it will be pinned in the comments below. yeah, it's a lovely game. But now I'm gonna open a gift that I got from Excellent Press, which I may not be saying right. Excellent Press, in November, I played 2 of their games. One was The 11th Beast, about being in 17th century London and trying to find a monster and being a part of a sort of generational monster hunter. And then the other was Exquisite Biome, which was a bit hard to explain, but a sort of sci-fi game where you find plants and then you draw them. And it was a great game. I believe that Gennaro really liked, actually, that game, if I recall. And after I did that, a couple of weeks after, Excellent Press reached out to me and said, we would like to send you some physical copies of the book as a thanks for playing it, which is absolutely unnecessary if you're a creator, but obviously it was really cool. And I gotta say, they are really nice, really good quality. So this is the Exclusion Zone Botanist book. It comes with the map that we were using a digital version of on a card, so you can use it in person if you want. And the book itself you can sort of see the quality of cardboard is good. You can see that there is a good thickness on the paper, and I'm emphasizing this because I gotta be honest, I didn't expect it to be as nice quality as it is. It's rolling sheet, one of the greatest ideas I've ever seen in a visual game, rolling for different shapes of leaves. And then the other thing they sent was the other game I played, which was 11th Beast, which is this one here. And 11th Beast also comes with a map, sort of their structure of game, and also has some really great art. Obviously traditional classical art, but and Renaissance art and so on, but it well chosen and beautifully printed art. Witchery says, you were expecting a zine and got a book. I was expecting a zine and I got a book, and a zine is fine, but I got really nice stuff here. This is really nice. It feels good in the hand. It has that sort of almost suede feel that they sometimes get on books. If for some reason you do want to get them yourself, I'm not being sponsored, but I will say you can get them at their website, which is exunt.press, I believe. I didn't look it up. You can tell I'm not sponsored for how little I know. But yeah, I think if you enjoyed those games and you think you're the kind of person who would want a physical version of them, they even have a deluxe version that comes with dice and stuff. I think, honestly, they were some of the best games I played of the year. I played probably 40 some odd games this year, and some of them weren't great. A lot of them were pretty good. There was a lot of repetition, but there were only a few where I really felt like I could get immersed in it. And I would say both of those games accomplished that. The other ones I'll mention is Alone Among the Stars, remains one of my favorites, and Weeds in the Waste, which has a similar concept to Exquisite Biome, but in a much more melancholy way. I really enjoyed Weeds in the Waste. That's probably my number one of the year. Yeah, I mean, about probably a dozen others I could name, but those are the ones that come to mind. But that was a lovely Christmas gift. Thank you, Exunt Press. If you happen to watch this later or so, I think you make a good game, and I look forward to trying other ones when I have the money to try them. And I see I'm getting some nice comments in here, so I will read those aloud. But before I get into those, I just wanted to say this has been a really lovely year for me in terms of the streams. I've sort of told you earlier one of the main reasons why I do this stream, which was traditionally a pretty unpopular stream because it is a guy here sitting writing, right? And that's a hard vision to convey in an environment where, like, YouTube advice is that you need to hook people the first second of the video, and then you need to keep hooking them every minute after. And if you don't know that, you will notice that structure in videos. And I wanted to make something that was more in line with, frankly, Mr. Rogers, which is what I grew up with, and old storytelling mediums, and sort of find I had this faith that my people were out there, the people who wanted to talk to each other and to be creative and so on. And it's been really lovely for the last couple of months to see a crowd form around that. I certainly don't take all the credit for that. I think any community is benefiting from everybody's contributions, but I have a lot of fun here with you guys. You are one of the highlights of my week, and have been really lovely after a couple of rough years. For me, it's a Merry Christmas. For you, it might be solstice, or well, Hanukkah's already passed, but if I missed it, Hanukkah, or one of the many other celebrations around the midwinter, all of which are legitimate and beautiful. And I will now take a look at some of the kind things. Tammy Morelli says, thank you, Rory, and all the live stream friends. I had a wonderful time tonight. Hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Stay safe wherever you are and whatever you do. Indeed. I agree with that sentiment. You yourself as well, Tammy. And Jumpstore says, thanks for the live stream, Rory. I hope your laptop gets fixed in the new year. Maybe. It's going to depend on me getting a lot of money. But otherwise, happy holidays, everyone. And Zombie Wolf says, great way to end the year, not end the world. Everyone enjoy your festivities. See you all next year. I promise you I'm not ending the world. It wasn't a Freudian slip. GS says, Merry Christmas, Happy Yule, and Happy New Year. Yeah. As for me, well, it's been an eventful but a fun year, and thank you, everybody. And if you have no other gift to give me other than your company, or if you want to give me a gift other than your company, consider giving the video a like. There you go. That's mine. But nonetheless, I will be back in January. I found a bunch of like solar punk games when I was looking for Christmas stuff. I don't know why, but I really wanted to do more solar punk stuff. So we probably will do some solar punk stuff in January, because we need to forget that it's January. Anyways, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Merry Christmas, but get out of my shop.
Finns det några snälla barn här?